All right. Hi, Treehousers. My name is Megan. We're going to be working on a bit more of the designing a home automation app today. I hope you all are excited to be here. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I hope you all enjoyed your weekend too. So it's Monday, start backing up with the work week. For those of you that don't know, Treehouse is a awesome platform to learn how to design, how to code, and we also have some other courses and content out there on things like business and some other areas. So go check it out at teamtreehouse.com. And there's lots of awesome people there. We have great forums and we have tech degrees if you're looking to make a career change. So come check us out at teamtreehouse.com. But today we're going to be working on a home automation app. So on the screen, what you see here, this is where we left it. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I don't think it was last week. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Um, so essentially, what we're building is going to be a tablet. So probably about that big. I don't know. Trying to get my hands in the in the screen here. Probably about that big tablet screen that's going to be downstairs in my house, and it's going to have things like the daily weather, daily calendar events, a grocery list, and a to-do list. Um, and so we're working on designing it, and then later we're going to work on actually building it. So this is where we left off last time. We were kind of doing some kind of in Adobe XD sketching instead of, by hand sketching. Um, so on the top left, we decided to put the weather section. Over here on the right, we decided to do the calendar section. Then we had the grocery list items and the to-do list items. To speed things along a little bit, I went ahead and upgraded this wireframe a little bit. I wanted to make sure that we got to focus on something a little bit different than just wireframing in XD today. So let me scroll over so you can see the difference. Try and get it kind of centered in there. Okay. Ta-da! So this is what I put together. I did use, just to make it a little bit speedier, I did use some UI kit elements. I like to use those once I've already kind of wireframed and sketched and done like the low fidelity wireframes and then pulling in UI kits, because in my opinion, if I just go straight to UI kits, a lot of the times I'm influenced by what they have, and then my design just looks exactly like what they have already, which we don't want, right? You want your design to look like you built it, not like you just copied from a UI kit from somewhere. So these are some of the things I pulled. I have these kind of cards up here. These are going to be our calendar items. So the idea is to have the event title, and then the subtitle will be the sub information. These are our to-do items, so they can be checked off. They have checkboxes. And then our grocery list don't. Oops, and actually, give me just a second. I forgot to mute my Slack over here. That way, if I get pinged, hopefully it doesn't interrupt us. Let me go through a couple different Slacks to set myself as do not disturb. There we go. Sorry about that. So then on this left side, we have the grocery store items. So I didn't put in checkboxes because the idea I had here was you're going to take this whole list and go to the grocery store and hopefully, if everything's available, buy everything on said list and then come home. So I didn't want to come home and then have to sit there and check off, like 15 things depending on, how much I was shopping for. I'd probably want to come home and just like wipe the list, right? Delete it all out because I went to the store and I got everything. And most of the times when I go to the store, if there's something that I forget or something that I couldn't find, it's usually like one or two items. So I'm kind of okay with having to retype in one or two things. So that's why I didn't put in like a checkbox like I did for the to-do side. And then on the to-do side, I figured that would be a much better place to have the ability to do a checkbox as you complete items. That way, if we're doing like we did yesterday, we did a big house clean. You can kind of check stuff off as you're done and see what's left. And we can also see like, oh, someone tackled doing the dishes, so I can do something else. So that's kind of where my mind was at. So I believe I did. I bumped this up a little bit and I put in some pretend data here so it looks even more realistic of what this app might look like working. Obviously, it has no color, it's all black and white, but kind of to show what this is all going to look like when it's all finished. So, for example, a hair appointment, the name of the place, an address, and then that would be maybe a map to that location. Same thing, game night, it's a video call. These are the games we're playing. Maybe it's a picture of, like a controller or something to remind me of what the event is about. Then we have our grocery store items. So you can see sometimes I didn't really come up with a secondary text. It'd probably just be window cleaner. Maybe if I wanted a specific brand, I could put it there. Like ice cream, I definitely want vanilla. It's my husband's favorite. Or like getting peanut butter. We like to get the really big peanut butters for our dog because she loves peanut butter, like most dogs do. But then there's some like strawberries. I couldn't really think of a secondary text to put in there. But because this is a component, if I come in here and try to delete it out, it deletes all the other ones. So that's why I left it there, just so we know why some of them have text and don't. On our to-do side, I figured the bubble here could be like the location. So L for living room, and then cleaning floors in the living room. I could do B for bathroom, scrub toilet, L for laundry room, things like that. Though the two L's might get confusing. But overall, this is the kind of medium fidelity wireframe that we're going to be working with today. So what we're going to work on today to take this a step further is we're going to choose our fonts, and we're going to choose some colors, and we're going to try and add some colors to this. So I like to start off with fonts first. I feel like for me personally, when I get into colors, I can like get into colors, and then I can spend like hours just trying to pick like the right blue. For me, I think picking a font is a little bit easier. That could be different for you or for someone else. Sometimes people like, this is the color I want, and they're done. And picking fonts, because there's just so many fonts out there, takes forever. So I like to do fonts first, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go pick a font, and then we're going to apply it to our design here so we can see how it looks. Okay, so I'm going to open up Google, and I am using Google Fonts. It's just fonts.google.com. It's a really easy place to not only see what the font looks like, but also to search through fonts. You can do a lot of great stuff where you can change, the size that you want to look at, and you can also change. Oops. Oops. I'm not used to typing on this keyboard anymore. That's great. Responsibility. Hopefully I spelled that all correctly this time. So you can change up what you want it to say too. So this can be really great if you're looking for like a font for a logo or like your big title font. So like if we're going to do Treehouse and we know this is going to be our logo font, so we want it to be like, let's make it so that it all fits inside these little boxes, 66. And then you can kind of start playing around and you can see how it looks. So I like using, oh, let me just refresh, that'll probably be faster. There we go. So let's pick out some fonts. So what I'm thinking is right now these are all sans serifs. So if you're not familiar with fonts, let me pull these up and let me do, oops, get rid of all the others. So serif fonts all have these little like lines underneath. I'm blanking on what they're called. I know someone's probably going to type it in chat, or Hope's going to message me later and be like, Meg, you forgot. It's called this. But for the easiest way to remember, serif fonts have all these little lines at the top and bottom of a lot of letters. And that's what makes them serifs. Oh, those are the serifs. Oh my gosh, because then it's sans serifs, which means without serifs. It's a Monday, everyone. That's what happens when it's a Monday. So then if I switch over here to sans serif, you can see all those serifs are gone. And it's just straight kind of letters. And then just so you all can see the differences, display can be serif or sans serif. There can be kind of a little bit more handwriting. There's a lot of different ones. Like this one kind of makes me think of like a comic book. They got kind of a lot of stuff there. They're more for like displaying. Like this is something I usually go to if I'm looking for maybe like a logo font or like a big header font. But I probably wouldn't use a lot of these for like body text. Display, in my opinion, usually big stuff. Handwriting, of course, is supposed to look more like something that's been handwritten. Can be useful at times if you want to do something very specific, like something that looks like handwriting, to, maybe for kids. I would say that something like the Pacifico feels a little bit more feminine to me. So if I was doing a website and my audience was mostly women, I might choose something like Pacifico. So I feel like this one kind of leads more to specific audiences when you look at handwriting. Like I feel some feel more masculine, some feel more feminine, some feel more childlike, some feel more like professional and adult. That's how I kind of feel when I look at handwriting. Just gonna make sure I don't have any questions. And then monospace is our last one. And you can see a lot of the, like Roboto is the font that Google uses for all of their stuff, have mono fonts. And these tend to be a little bit more spaced out, which can be good for body text. For headers, it can look almost too spaced out sometimes. But I think using it for body text when you have lots of paragraphed, like maybe blog post kind of thing, might be good. What app am I using? I'm using for designing, I'm using Adobe XD. And then we're checking out Google Fonts here, which is just in the web browser. So let's go pick some fonts. I'm going to do sans serif first. I prefer sans serif. I feel like lately most designs are using kind of a sans serif. It's kind of a modern style. If you want to put it that way, I tend to think that serif is a little bit more old school and feels a little bit more like fancy, in my opinion. I feel like when I think of serif, that it's a little fancier. So this is just going to be something in my home. Doesn't need to be super fancy, so I'm going to do sans serif. And kind of liking Open Sans. Open Sans is a nice font. Roboto is really widely used. Like I said, Google uses Roboto, but I'd kind of like to try something different than something that's typically used. So I'm not going to choose Roboto for that reason, but it is a really great font. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through and say which ones kind of pique my interest. I kind of like this railway. It's a little bit different. Kind of like how the L is kind of swooping like that. That's kind of fun. I'm going to open that in a new tab. Some of these, like these, you can tell they're all the same style right now, but some of the regular is a little bit bolder and some, not so much. This one almost feels like it's kind of squished in a little bit. kind of like this quicksand too, but I kind of like the swooping that I had with Railway. So before we get too far in the weeds with picking out a font and, you know, deciding between 10 different kinds, because I could do that, I'm going to go ahead and choose Railway just so we can go a little bit faster. And I'm going to go ahead and download this family. Altia, okay. Open. Boop, and I'm going to go ahead and install. So this is going to take a second, and if you've ever wondered how to install fonts on your computer, that's how you do it. So I open them all at once, and then I just go through and install. So this will take a second, not the funnest part of today, but this will give us Railway font, so then we can use it wherever we want. And we don't necessarily need all these different types, but it will give us some options. You can see they have one thing about using fonts with specific things like light, italic, light. When you try and do a change to your font, like taking a font and then making it italic, it doesn't actually quite work as well as using the italic version of that font. And you can, I'm not going to get into it because there's a lot of differences and specifics. That'd be more of a very deep dive into typography. But using the font's actual version of bold, the font's actual version of, italic, the designer who created this font actually made it purposely so it works in, italic and regular and bold and all that stuff. When you take something just like the regular font and you make it italic, it actually can make the font a little wonky. It's never, in my opinion, it's never anything too noticeable, but just so you know why there's like thousands of different versions of one kind of font. So we did Railway. Just making sure I have no questions. So Railway. Because this is a header up here, I'm going to change it. We're going to go, let's do bold and see how bold that is. It's pretty bold. Oh, I just had the 9. I need to recenter that. There we go. And you can see how the 9 almost looks like it's like dropping below the rest of the word. I'm kind of not liking that, but I can go in and I can fix that later. Because I can also do some changes where I can move it, and I can also just make the 9 its own text box and then align it the way that I want it to be aligned. So that one's bold. Let me look at semi-bold. I kind of like semi-bold better between the two. Bold feels really thick, and I can tell even looking at the way this looks like on the screen is it's really drawing my eye right to Thursday, April 9th, which isn't a bad thing because with design, you want to have a nice hierarchy and you want someone to be able to look through your design in a logical way, right? You don't want them to be drawn to something up top and then to the lower right and then up here and over there because it makes it, kind of messy and it's hard to follow. You kind of want your design to work like reading a book. So you want us to go top to bottom and then kind of left to right. It kind of makes like an F pattern when reading through. But in my opinion, I think the bold is a little too strong. I think the semi-bold is nice where it still draws my attention to it, but it doesn't take away from what else is on the screen. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to add this as a character style, which in XD you can do this. So how I did that, let me delete it. I opened up my little side menu over here. So it says there's updates available, but don't worry about that. Here's where you can add in things like your colors, your character styles, components. I like to add in my character styles as I'm designing and colors when we get to colors. It makes it a lot easier to switch things around and I can show you why. So let me add that back in. Now, obviously, I don't want this tomorrow to be in this railway. Oh, is it not going to let me change it? There we go. But it auto changes the text for you just by clicking, making sure you're clicked onto that text box, and then clicking your character style will automatically change it for you. Oops, wrong button. There we go. Make sure that all of the rest go back. Okay, so we have our title text. Now this is kind of more of a subtitle. It looks, if I remember correctly, these are the same size. So that would be my regular. This is a little bit bigger, so this is going to be like a subheader. So I'm going to do this one next. And then these grayed out ones will be then even smaller than, be the smallest one as we go. So let's do this. We need to go to, oops, wrong way, to railway. Now, because this one has a lot of options, it has black. Black will be like, actually, I'll show you up here so you can see the difference. So we're going to keep it as symbol, but just to show the difference. And this is railway. This one seems to have kind of the whole range that you can see in a typeface. So we have black, which is usually like the thickest, darkest version of the font. Extra bold, a little bit less. Bold, a little bit less, and you can see it just kind of reduces each time. Semi-bold, medium, regular. Then we have light, and then it even has extra light, and it has thin. So you can see this one has a huge range of options. I'm going to keep this as semi-bold. I feel like that's nice and thick without being too much. But jumping back in here to our sub, let's make this railway regular. I'm also going to look at medium. Did it change? It did change. Okay. Sometimes it's when the fonts are similar, it's kind of hard to tell. So that's roboto regular. Let's also change that to railway medium. I think that looks pretty good. It's not like semi-bold, where it's not like taking the attention away from the title by making it too thick and too big of a font, too large. But it is big enough that it is showing that this text is more important than the text below it. So like we did before, make sure I'm selecting the right one. We'll add that one in there. So we have both fonts up here. Now let's do our next level, which is the one in here. So this one is, we're probably going to stay regular. Regular is typically what a lot of people use as like body copy. So we'll do railway, and we'll probably keep it regular, and we'll keep it the same font size. Make sure regular. Just make sure they all got changed. Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. Get back in here and add that. So now I can come over here. Make sure I have that. I think that was actually a little bit larger. See what size it is. It is 20. So this is a kind of a specific choice because the rest of the text is pretty large. But if I do this in the 16-point font, that 12 gets really tiny. So I'm going to leave it bigger. We're just going to make sure that it's also railway. So I'm going to add that over here. So that's going to be, this is going to stay the same, just so it fits. And you can see the numbers are kind of a little different in this font, which I might change out just because the way that they're shaped makes them a little bit odd to read, but I don't think it's too bad. Let me make sure these are the same. Railway 20 regular, Railway 20 regular. Okay, because that 12 still looks kind of tiny compared to that 60. But, and that's one thing when you start adding your font in, you may realize something about it, like the circle part of the 6 and the big circle for the 0 are making it the number look wider because they're a little bit taller and wider than something like the 1 and the 2, and the 1 is like really skinny, which is making, even though they're the same size, making the 12 look smaller than the 60%. So I'm going to keep going with this font just for the sake of time, but when I'm working on this before we jump in to the next portion, I might come and adjust that a little bit just so the font looks a little bit more equal. And that may just be this, I bump up a little bit. I may make that like 22. I do that and that looks a little bit better, but then you can see it starts to look a little bit darker compared to that one. So we'll keep playing around with it. So now we need to change our headers all to this 16. You can see they all changed at once. Boop, they all changed at once. Now these are a little bit lighter. I like the way the font looks here, but this does look a little light. So I may try this out instead of regular, doing medium. I think that looks a little bit better. So I may keep this instead of 16. Switch this out to, and let me show you what I did too. So if you ever decide to change something about your font, you don't need to delete it. You can just come in here and edit. And then we decided, you know what, regular, when it comes to these, it looks a little too close to our subtext. So I'm going to change it to medium, and you can see that automatically switched. Because everything that's using these character styles, when you change them, everything in your design will change, which is awesome. It's really nice for anyone who hasn't played around in, XD or Figma or Sketch or any of these before. That is a feature that I think every designer was like dying to have, and now that it's here, it's so nice because in your design, you're going to stick to a font or two fonts and some font styles and sizes. And then if you make a design change where you're like, okay, well, this needs to not be 50. We need to make it, oops, it changed on its own, 55. It automatically updates wherever this font's being used, and it's awesome. Okay, so that was that. So then we make sure we apply it to all the places we want to use it. We want to use it all of these places. Yep, that's the edge. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything hiding on the side. Make sure I save. Oh, and I need to get this little L in here. See what that is. Medium 2. Yeah, I think that looks fine. Okay, so the last text that we need to get fixed is this subtext here, this kind of lighter gray text. So I'm going to use this one up here as our example. And right now it's regular. So I'm going to switch it over to railway. And railway regular looks like subtext. It's a little bit light, but this could just be the color. So I'm going to try darkening it a bit. Okay, and I think that looks a little bit better. It's a little bit clearer. Because before it was when I switched it over, I can switch over this one too, so you can see the difference. It's a little bit light, which I think would be a little bit harder to read. So I darken the color. That's always a good thing to test too. Is not just the size of the font, but the color. So I've just been making this a little bit darker, and I think that gets easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to save that one, just so they're all the same. So you can see the difference because it's the same font size, but you can see the difference between the fonts. Robato's got a little bit taller, X height, and Railway has a shorter X height. And X height is just literally the height of the letter X in in your font, which is usually about the size of, like the top of your Y, the top of the A, the S, all the letters like that. That's your X height. And so this one has a shorter one, you can see, compared to the Roboto. So it's a little bit shorter. Make sure I save. Okay, so now we've applied our font to our design using Railway. It's not a ton different than the Roboto that was being used before, but it's a little bit different. Makes the design look a little bit different. And I like to use, when I start adding colors and things, more realistic text. If you have actual text that's going to go on your website or app, like the about paragraph or the company's mission statement, anything like that, I like to use actual text when you're starting to get to mocking up, because it sometimes you can plan for text, and then when you get the real text that's going to go there, it's smaller or it's a lot bigger, and then you have to make a lot of design adjustments. And so I like to do that a little bit earlier so that you can make those adjustments beforehand and not have to worry about it later. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into color. So font is done. I might like a little adjustment on numbers, but otherwise font is done. So we're going to use, this is called Coolers. It's because it's coolers.co instead of colors. I think it's a lot of fun to play around with, and it kind of gets ideas going. You just start the generator by clicking on it, and then it's going to generate a palette of random colors. And then you just hit your space bar and it auto changes colors. And then if you're like, ooh, I really like this blue, you can lock it down, and then that blue will stay, but the rest will change. So for our design, I want to keep it something not super bright, because it's going to be in a smaller space. Thinking something more muted, more blues, maybe a little bit of green. Actually going to unlock that one. And purples are kind of nice. Those are kind of pretty. I kind of like this as like our bright color, maybe. That could be used to call attention to something. So might lock that one, keep it. And because this is for my design, for myself, this is more of my personal preference. If I was going to do this for a client, I would make sure that it's going to match the mood that they want their website to come across as. So a website that wants to be really modern and professional, I'd probably like to use black and white to have that really stark contrast. And then I might use a color or two as like pop outs, and that might come from like their logo, for instance, if they have a colored logo, or company colors. But for something that's a little bit more playful, I'd use brighter colors, maybe a more variety of colors. And so we're kind of going for something kind of in the middle. Like I want it to feel playful and not really professional, because it's not really a professional project, but I also don't want it to look childish. So kind of like that mint. Like this to me would be a little bright for what I'm going for right now. But this blue, you can also drag colors so that you can see them next to each other. I kind of like those two together. I kind of like this as our light color. And honestly, that blue's not bad. If I bring it in here, maybe we'll just have kind of more of like a monochromatic set of colors with lots of blue. I like blue. I also like green, but kind of feeling these. Let me see if I can find another one that kind of fits. That's kind of interesting. And now another thing to think about is the number of colors that you're using in your design. For new designers, I like to suggest using black and white, and then having like two colors that you're using to add those pop of color, add that feel, add that mood that you're going for. Use it to draw eyes to like calls to actions, things where you're doing like click here, donate now, those kinds of things. The more colors you have to work with, it kind of becomes more difficult to use them, because then a lot of times you're trying to think of, how do I use all of these colors in my design? And the more colors you have, it's harder to figure out where to place them. So we're gonna, this might be like a good background color so that it's not a bright white, especially at night, with the tablet on. Using just like plain regular white is really, really bright. I think we've all looked at our phone at night, and a lot of us might prefer using things like dark mode during the nighttime or all the time. But those apps and websites where it's just bright white at night, I always go into my phone settings and turn down the brightness, because it's harsh, right? It's really harsh on your eyes. So using this kind of off-white color might be better for the background, because it'll automatically kind of mute it a bit, and then at night it might not feel so harsh. So we'll give it a try. I kind of don't mind this other light blue. Kind of got a green going on, so why not? We'll stick with that. So I'm going to add these into XD so that they're easier to work with and apply. So I'm just going to use this for my example, fill, and first one, F1, FF, E7. Okay, so you can see it's kind of in the green family, and a lot of times when you type it in here, it helps to show off kind of what colors are in that color you chose. So in here, it looks kind of like a tanny white, but then when I put it in XD, I see, oh, it's got actually a lot of green aspects to it, and sometimes that can be helpful too. So obviously it's not going to show up really well because it's a white, but oh, I want to put it there. Make sure that's at 100%. Oop, and I'm going to cough real quick, so I'm going to mute myself. Okay, there we go. I want to make sure my sound is still going real quick. Okay, cool. All right, so should have edited it here. I edited it in the wrong place. 100%. Okay. All right, so I know it's really hard to see, but we're going to change it now. And I'm going to copy. You can also click to copy it. Goes by a little bit faster. We're going to change it over here because we don't want to lose that color. We want to essentially add a new color. Okay. Now we have the blue. Copy. Paste. Now we have that darker blue. We have that going. Oh, it's not letting me change it now. It's on. Okay, let me just paste another one over here for a second. Oh, it didn't change the color. That's why. It's the same color, so it's like, you already have that one. That would be a good time for it to tell me that I was trying to do the same color again. And our last one. Let's add that one. Kind of like a seafoam green, that last one. Okay, so now we have our color palette, and these could be changed, they can be adjusted. I might go in here and edit it and be like, you know what, it's a little too green, might make it a little bit lighter, might change, some of the color to it, but for right now, we're going to start playing around with it. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm going to use this color to make a background, because that's usually where I like to start. So I'm just going to draw a big old box over the whole thing. I'm going to make sure it has no border, and we're going to to fill it, instead of coming over here, I just click, boop, and it's done. And now that I see it large screen, I can tell there's a bit of green in it. Sometimes it helps also to see the color bigger, because on my screen, it still looks kind of tan, kind of green. On the screen where I can see, what you all are seeing on the stream, it looks really green, especially because the treehouse outline is green, so it's making the color inside look more green. It's bringing out the green elements in it. So I'm sure some of you have been like, Megan, that's like really green. And now that I see what you all are saying, it definitely looks a lot greener. On my side, not as much, because I don't have the green treehouse background, but it's pretty green. But that's okay. We're going to keep playing. So I need to move this, arrange. I need to send it all the way to the back. There we go. And you can see these are some components I brought in. So because of that, they have this like white background inside of them. I'm going to leave it right now because I might separate things. Like these cards I'll probably leave with their own background. These lists I might not, because I think that might look a little odd, but we'll keep going around. Okay, so we have our background. The next thing I like to decide is what color I want the text to be. For readability, you really want your text to be a big contrast from the background. The bigger the contrast, the easier it is to read. Like if I were to make this regular white, you can tell you cannot see that at all on the screen. So white text would not be good. But if we do the opposite and we go all the way to black, oh, I think this whole thing is set with a filter on it. We go all the way to black, it is a lot, oh, here we go. There we go. It was the opacity. It's a lot sharper of a contrast, right? You can really see that sun symbol from the background. So I am probably going to do this dark blue color. I think it pops out against the background. And I'm not sure for this, like the sun symbols we have going on over here, if I want them to be like a contrasting kind of color, like going something like that. That's a little light. That's a little bit better. Or if I want to actually make this look like a sun and have it be like yellow. And have the water droplet look like water and have it be blue. I'm not sure if I want to do that yet, so we'll kind of leave that off. But kind of liking this blue, so turn the opacity on these. I use the opacity just to make it look grayer. That. So we'll just make them all blue for right now. And get our bubbles. See what happens if we make those blue as well. Blue. And I think I got there we go. Oops. There we go. Make sure I got the right thing selected. It's kind of hard. I'm gonna need to get in here nice and close. There we go. Okay, now we can zoom back out. I was trying to select this first item here instead of the background, so it was kind of fighting me a little bit. Okay, so the background, the more I look at it, it's a little green, so I'm going to come in here and edit. Get it here to a little more yellowy because that feels a little more tan. Dark. Okay, I kind of like the contrast of that a little bit better. Also going to change the background here. Oops. Same thing. Nope, I don't want that one. Did I get it? There we go. All right, now our cards up here, I might leave as their own color. Take this a little more blue. Oops. I gotta select the thing I want. Oh, it's gonna turn the whole thing blue. Since this is kind of like not really a bright blue, it feels kind of like a muted blue. I wanted to make this a little more muted as well to kind of go with it, but sticking with a blue theme. This I'm just kind of going to leave gray right now because I don't want to worry about it too much. And these I can change the color as well. Okay. Oops. Wanted to hit edit. There we go. I'm going to copy this. Edit. Go. This will just make it go across all the colors a little bit faster, making all of our text that dark blue. Now, when I look at the colors here, it's almost making this blue look purple, and that's another thing that can happen when you're working with your colors, is you may have this color palette and you're like, this looks really sweet, and then you go to add them, and then when they're actually really close next to each other with, circle versus text, you're like, oh wow, that really makes that color look kind of purple, and I'm not sure if I like it. And background, I think I'm gonna lighten it up just a little bit. Still not my favorite, but go with it for now. Okay. Now for our weather symbols, also because this color is on this background, it stands out, but I think this needs to be a little bit lighter. Okay. And then these, I'm probably going to give them a border of probably that same color. Oh, can I not do that? Copy it. I'm going to make it darker. Pull it straight down to make it darker. Oh, that's why. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. Copy that. Fill. Yes, border. Border this color. And make sure that's all the way up. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I might make that a little bit darker so it stands out just a little bit more. But that's another great thing to do is I took a color I already have, this color, and I just darkened it and made it a different version of that color. And doing that in your design will help keep things looking like they're pulled together instead of trying to pick a whole different color, using the same color you have and either lightening it or darkening it. And it helps make everything look pulled together. I think I'm actually going to do that with these. Oh, I keep doing that. Gotta click into it. Because I feel like this blue is kind of just a little bit different. Oh, I'm going to do this way. I'll lighten it. Like that's very similar. Change that one. I think it needs to be lighter for the text to stand to come through. It does have some purple aspects to it. I feel like this gray box is what's throwing me off. It's just gray. We tried doing well, let's do a border of this up. There, I think that looks a little bit better. It's not as distracting now as a color. And I kind of don't mind them being two different colors, because another thing I've been pondering is, you know, if different events are different colors based on what the event is, which is something else that we can play around with. I don't think we added this as a color. It's very similar, but then when you see it over here on the left, they look almost exactly the same. Then when you see them in larger form, this one looks a lot more purple, and this one looks a little bit more blue. If I switch that over, you can see the change in there. And right now, I'm kind of pondering on that background color. Just feels a little bit outdated in a color. I'm thinking maybe if we go straight, just a little bit more white, that it might be a little bit better. I'm going to copy that, edit this, changes everything at once. So you can see when I did it earlier, all of these areas stayed that kind of yellow color and the background didn't change. But when I went in here and edited the color in here, it changes everything that had that color. It just makes it so much faster. It's really nice. Okay, so now because I changed this, I am going to come in here and change our border color. Make sure they're pretty dark so that they're easy to see. I feel like that's a little bit better. Okay. There we go. I'm kind of liking that background a little bit better. I felt like that yellow was coming through really strong, and it was kind of disrupting the rest of it. Okay, so we're essentially using this one up here. This is for our main color, and this is for our bubbles. Kind of wish I could organize them in here and put them together. But right now, that's what we got going on. So now to think about my bubbles. Now these are kind of more a call to action kind of thing. So I might make them a different color entirely. Kind of like that. So that they kind of stick out as this is something you can interact with instead of this is just another part of the app. But just like I said before, seeing the colors like this, they look great. Seeing it on here, really, really light, right? It's hard to see, at least on my screen. I know on the other screen, the green from the treehouse background is making it stand out a little bit more. But it's a little light. So I'm going to come in here and we're going to play with this one a little bit more. Maybe mute it a little bit too, because that blue is kind of muted. Kind of like that. I think that looks kind of nice. Let me pull that color. And this, I don't want to do that. That will change the name of the color. It won't actually change the color itself. I've done that before, and then it gets really confusing. But like I said, this actually just changed the name of the color. So if you want to go in and you want to name this like, oops, slate blue, or something like that, then you know that that is called slate blue. And we accidentally changed our background. There we go. But it doesn't actually change the color itself. It just changes the name. So whenever you want to edit, make sure you go in and click edit. I've done that many times myself where I've like tweaked a color a little bit and I've double clicked it and like, oh, and I just copy and paste it there and then realize later that I never actually changed the color. I just changed the name. Okay, so I'm kind of peeking on both to kind of see. And another thing I'm going to do is zoom out. So I'm kind of liking this blue. I feel like it's a nice strong blue and it sticks out. But when I zoom out, this is another thing to check, is the blue bubbles are sticking out to me really strong. And the text itself is not. And the bubbles are kind of additional pieces to the design. The text is really what I want to see, and when you zoom out, you can see where your eyes are drawn to really easily. So the Thursday, April 9th, because it's big and bold, is pretty easy to see right away. But then my eyes go to the icons and the circle bubbles. So in terms of adding color to the page, I added color to the page, to the design, but in terms of is it really well added to the page, when I zoom out here, I would say not as well, because my eyes are getting drawn to the place where I don't necessarily want my eyes to get drawn to. And that could be a problem with the font choice, so we can play around with the font, and it could also be a problem with the color and having this blue here as the color. So I kind of like leaving the icons a color, but let's try if we actually do a shade of the background here for these, because we want them to be a little bit more blended in, right? The focus is on the words, because I need to know what's on my grocery list. I need to know what my to-dos are. The focus is not on the bubbles. So click on that, and then like I did before, I'm going to come in here and actually use the same color that we did over here. Control C. E. Enter. Okay. So the goal is to have pictures here of like just pulled stock photo kind of pictures, and then here just like letters to describe where it is. Let me save this as a color. There we go. Just makes this a little bit faster. Let me zoom out. And now I feel like from the zoomed out, and I'm looking on both screens so I can see the difference too. I feel like the hierarchy of the bubble and the text is about equal right now. So I think lightening the bubbles will help make the text stand out more. Because again, I want the text to be what's important. So instead of going into the bubbles, I'm just going to come in here and edit. We're going to lighten that, and you can see they all lighten at the same time. I think that's a little bit better. Now when I zoom out, now you can see the text stands out more than the bubble does. So if there's no image that's going to be pulled, like say it can't find an image for brownie mix, it's just going to be a circle. And for over here, they're going to be circles with text inside of them with a single letter to match the room. So you don't want to take away from where you want your user to focus. So we fix that issue here, because now that I zoom out, the text stands out more than the bubbles, which was our issue before. And we didn't want the user to focus on the bubbles because there was no important information there for them, right? The important information is in the text. So that's kind of playing around with colors. It's definitely not done. I'm definitely still playing around with things. But I also know that we're right at the end of our time. I need to like set a timer or something in front of me so I make sure I get through things a little bit quicker. But I'm going to work on the colors some more, and next time I will show you all what I decided on, kind of the final um, look of the app. And then we can work on um, laying out how you would build the app. Because before I build an app, I like to break down kind of what I need to do. It makes it a lot easier when I get started coding, that I don't end up with all sorts of like extra code or extra pages or different things that I don't need. If I kind of plan it out beforehand, it makes it a lot easier to jump into building it out. So we can look at doing that next time. Now we'll show off how this all looks when it's all finished. But I hope you learned some stuff about typography and about adding fonts and color and stuff to the screen, and we'll look at the finished product more next time. For those of you that have been hanging out the whole time, thank you so much for hanging out with me. We are going to be continuing to do these live streams, so make sure you follow us on social, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and then on Twitch too is where we're all live streaming. So be sure to check us out there. Follow if you haven't, if you want to get notified. Um, and yeah, come check us out at Team Treehouse, where you can learn design things like I've been going through here, like typography and color and using XD and other tools. We have a tech degree where you can learn all of these things and practice with projects that will be graded. And then you end up with a certificate that you've completed a tech degree. We have tech degrees for design. We have also tech degrees for coding as well. If you are more into coding than you are from designing things out. Both are not everyone's cup of tea. Some people really love to design and like to play around with this, and some people really like to get into the code and figure out things that way and problem solve in that way. So come check out Team Treehouse. We have lots and lots of great courses and lots of things that you can learn around JavaScript and Python and design and all sorts of things, CSS, HTML, what have you. We've got it. So come check us out, and we'll see you around in the forums and in Slack and hanging out on teamtreehouse.com. But till next time, I will see you all next week, and we'll keep working on this project some more. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there, and come back to hang out with us again.